So let's get started. So I'm going to be talking a little bit about our 6 sessions. So with Intention Essentials, there are 5 teaching essential sessions, and they are recorded. You go through them with me, but even though they're recorded, you meet every Saturday with your other course members, and you also do the homework and exercises in real time. So you'll be working, sharing with the people on the course as you go in the teaching sessions. Then I hold 1 2-hour live mentoring session. During that mentoring session, I work with you, I coach you, I answer your questions, I help you, I refine your techniques, and we practice them. So that's a big session together. So I've divided teaching and coaching into 2 different sections of the course. Now, the course is going to go over many things, but you're going to find out that intention is probably very different from what you've been told. People usually talk about intention as a power thought, and it's the only thing that gets sent out to the universe. Maybe you do a morning meditation or another practice, and then you send it out, and that's the only thing the universe hears. However, what I'm going to show you, and you'll find out this through practice and homework, is that you're a leaky bucket and you're sending out intention all the time with every thought you have. And most of those thoughts are negative. So we'll be practicing how to get over that and to be more intentional in your thinking, because your thinking, those thoughts, are intentions, every single one of the 70,000 you have every day. And when you add them up, they become your life's intention. So we're going to learn how to overcome that. I'm also going to teach you what I consider the 7 key essentials to becoming a good and effective intender. And they include things like the best language to use, because lots of people get that wrong. They usually err on the side of being way too general. I show you exactly how to structure your thoughts and your words to maximize your success. If I do anything with my students, the number one thing is that they don't know how to put together an intention that's effective. As I say, they're way too general, or they throw in everything they want in their lives, all in the same statement. I also show you that you can break this down. You can do different intentions. I'm going to show you the right mind state for doing intention. I'm going to show you how to visualize and how to do mental rehearsal so that you can do it like elite athletes who use mental rehearsal all the time. Everyone from Olympic stars to Muhammad Ali used intention. He did it way back then. He had intention statements, he had visualization, and his words were the things that got created into actions. If you go back and look at the fights, he was predicting it all the time with those cute little rhyming things that he used to do, the little quatrains. They were actually intentions in disguise. I'm going to show you how to take baby steps. I'm going to show you how to embody your intention. And so much more. I'm going to show you probably the centerpiece of my work, which is getting off of yourself. Invariably, when people are stuck with their intentions, with manifestation, I will say to them, stop intending for yourself. Intend for someone else who needs it more than you. And it breaks that negative cycle, and invariably, they get what they want by intending for someone else. Altruism is a big key piece of my work, and it's not just a nice thing to do. It's a necessary thing to you. It's a necessary thing for being effective with manifestation. I see it over and over again. When people get off of themselves and start intending for someone else, they themselves get healed or get what they've wanted for in the universe, their heart's desire. I show you how to overcome negativity and doubt, the biggest areas that people fail with because they undermine, they sabotage themselves and their intentions through doubt and fear. And I have 7 more keys to help you get over doubt and fear. And I also show you how to run a successful Power of 8 group. Now, the other centerpiece of my work is group intention. In this course, you learn how to do intention for yourself, but then you move into learning how to do it in a group. And there are certain techniques, once again, that spell the difference between effectiveness and failure. So I show you how to work successfully in a group. And a group is so important because it's altruism embodied. If you're in a group of 8, 7/8 of the time you're intending for someone else. But as I've seen thousands of times, it's that act for intending for someone else that can make you better. I had a student called Tony. He had terrible leg pain for over 10 years after a terrible accident where he broke his legs. He was in terrible pain. Doing intention with his Power of 8 group really lessened it. But it was only after he intended for someone else with the same situation, with leg pain, did he heal completely. And I see that over and over and over again. So you'll learn a lot of the qualities and just the way to run a Power of 8 group, because loads of people get it wrong. All the important techniques that you'll need. So those are the bare bones of the course. But of course, there are many hours of teaching in this foundational course. And I call it foundational because it's foundational to my work. It's great preparation for the Power of 8 Intention Masterclass, my year-long course, which starts next February. It's great preparation for many other things, including the new science or many of my particular courses, which take intention into relationships, into your own healing practice, and much, much more. But you have to learn the basics first. And my work is very different from most other people in this field. I have different techniques. They've been the result of combining the latest frontier scientists in quantum physics with the practices of a variety of intention masters, master healers, Buddhist monks, Qigong masters. Each of them had peculiarities to their modality, but they also had a lot of commonalities. And I distilled all those common threads into a simple program, the heart of which I teach with Intention Essentials. I've called that powering up because that's another key element to the way I teach intention. It's not meditation. We know that because we've done brainwave studies on people doing Power of 8 groups, and the brainwave signatures are completely different from those of meditation. They're completely opposite. What they are almost identical to brainwave studies done by the University of Pennsylvania and elsewhere on people like Buddhist monks during ecstatic prayer. The people, when they do intention in a group, are essentially in a state of ecstatic oneness, and that shows up in their brains. and that shows up in what they tell me. So there are particular techniques I teach that other people don't, that I've found are highly, highly successful. So that's the nuts and bolts of the course. Now I'm happy to answer some of your questions, and I can carry on talking a little bit more about the course as we hear some of the things that you need to know about more. So you know what to do. Put it in the Q&A section if you would. So Molly, let's hear some of the questions that we've got.
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can. Thank you.
So the first question is, how will this course build into the 2023 masterclass or a masterclass session?
Okay, it'll be a 2025 masterclass. That'll be next year when we run it again. It builds because it gives you the very foundations. There are a lot of things that I throw at the masterclass. I do 13 keys, so there are 6 keys more. Plus, you learn how to take intention out into the world, in your environment. So you use intention in the masterclass for relationships, for picking up other people's intentions, for overcoming negativity, other people's negativity as well as your own. You learn how to get along using intention with people not like you. And that's really important at this point of our evolution, because we're so polarized. And this is an election year, so it's worse than normal. You learn more about what to do in a group, and we actually place you in a group in your time zone in the year-long masterclass. So it's more advanced, and this helps you prepare for it. It's particularly good for the Intention Essentials, is really good for people who have never taken anything from me before. So lots of people have studied with other teachers, but as I say, my techniques are different. And I always ask people, don't throw in other people's work. It's not necessary. I've worked with thousands of people, and I've seen it work thousands and thousands of times. Probably now 10 to 20,000 people, I guess, I've worked with, as well as all the thousands of people on my intention experiments. And I've seen it work every time. I just had a talk a few weekends ago, and I had a woman in the audience who had broken her leg and had 7 bolts in her ankle. It was very, very painful. And she could barely walk even with crutches. We did an intention, and she literally threw her crutches away. I have a video I'm getting of that. And it was quite an amazing moment. And that was just after a 10-minute intention using the techniques that I teach. So that's why it's important to just follow what I do, because I've seen it work. It's successful. I don't tell people not to do what other teachers do. I love and respect so many people in this field, but don't try to mix them all together, because the brainwave signatures for people who use meditation will be very different from mine. And I don't want to create a mishmash. So I show you how to keep it pure and keep it simple.
Great.
So I hope that's answered your question about the differences. This is more fundamental. It's a good place to start.
We've had a couple of questions on how the groups work. So is it one person's intention in each meeting, or can you intend for 2 or 3 people in one session?
What I teach is learning how to do at least 3 intentions in that hour-long meeting. You don't have to just intend for one person. And that means that within 3, by the 3rd session, it's your turn again most of the time. So 3rd or 4th session. So you should be able to rotate people very easily. And I suggest with groups, it doesn't have to be 8. It can be 5 or 6. It can be 12. I suggest you don't do more than 12, because you won't have so many turns yourself if you're rotating around the entire group.
We've had a couple of questions on the type of intention setting you can do. So is it just to heal health, or can you heal pets, or can you heal relationships, etc.?
Great question. And I go through all of that. You can heal anything in your life. So the main categories are, of course, health, but also finances, relationships, your career or hobbies. Let's say you want to change careers, or you just want a new job, or you want to do volunteer work and you haven't been able to find the right fit, or you want to find out what your life's purpose is. And then once you do, to pursue it. We have people doing intentions for all those categories and more. As for pets and people outside the group, always. I've had people heal horses, dogs, find lost cats, and so much more. Heal cats, birds, everything. So you can do pets. You can do family members outside the group. We've had many people doing intentions for their children. We had one guy called Tom Speckman and his wife, who came to one of our classes in a real state because their newborn baby had a perforated colon and the doctors didn't think he was going to live. So we did intentions right away for little baby Hamilton, and we continued doing them over the class. And Hamilton is probably 2, maybe even 3-year-old now. So he lived despite all of the doctor's gloomy prognoses. And he really became a healthy, vibrant little boy. So we've done that. We've done intention for loved ones in hospitals. We had a woman whose husband had life-threatening sepsis. And the group did an intention for him, her group did an intention for him. He not only healed, to the doctor's total amazement, within, I think, a day or two, but within 10 days, he was so well. He got out of the hospital in a few days, and he was so well that they ended up within 10 days going on a holiday that they had hoped to go on before that, but were about to cancel because he was so ill. So we have plenty of intentions for loved ones with cancer, loved ones with other illnesses, loved ones with accidents, estranged children, estranged parents. We had a woman called Annette who did an intention to get along better with her mother, who she believed didn't want her. And her intention was to connect better. And we actually did various techniques with her, and she ended up being able to communicate with this estranged mother so much better. They were both amazed. So we do all kinds of intentions, and I give you the wording, the specificity, and everything else for all of those categories.
Great. Another question is, will the Intention Essentials course teach me enough to start a Power of 8 group and get results?
Yes, and we also have a special place on our website, on my own website, in the community section. We're going to be setting up a little private group that's just for the course members of this Intention Essentials 2024 class. So not only will you be taking this course together, but you can set up Power of 8 groups within the members of the class. So they will all have been able to learn just as you have. And you can just find the people who are in a friendly time zone and set up a group with them and start working with it effectively. So I give you all the rudimentaries of running a Power of 8 group so you can do that. What you can't do is teach it. That is well further down the line. But my aim is for people all to move away from this class, to finish this class and be in a Power of 8 group and start working in group intention.
Great. Do you need permission of the other person to intend for them?
Great question. Yes, you do. Unless they are in a coma, so they're unconscious, or they're a very small child or baby. I always say, ask for permission. Now, let's say you and this person aren't getting along. One thing you can do is have your group send an intention to you, or you do it yourself, for you to have more loving thoughts and get along better with the person. So do you see what you do? You're focusing on you and not the other person if they haven't given you permission. If it's somebody who doesn't believe in any of this, who thinks it's woo-woo, what you can do, and many of my students have done, is go to them and say, let's say they're ill. You can go to them and say, do you mind if a group of us just do a kind of secular prayer for you? Just so that you'll get better. Most people won't say no to that. And particularly if you say it's a secular prayer, kind of prayer, then it takes away all of the emotive stuff about religion. And also, when people think people are praying for them, praying to God for them, a lot of the times they think, uh-oh, I'm a no-hoper now. I'm a hopeless case. If somebody is praying to God for me, I guess that means last minute stuff, last rites. So if you say secular prayer, that takes all of that out of the equation.
Another question, how important is it to read and study the science of the field before taking the course?
Well, I could recommend that you do that. It's not essential. It's a really nice thing to do. And if you don't like to read, you can also take my new science course, which gives you a backing in all of the science that I teach across all of my books and work. You could also read The Power of Eight, which will give you a background about the Power of Eight and all of the things that it can do. It's not essential. It's just a nice extra thing to do.
Can this course and intentions help with reprogramming limiting beliefs?
Yes. One of the things that it does is work on doubt and fear. And those are parts of the same coin, essentially. So I teach you some good techniques to eliminate that. And I show you what was used by one of the world's greatest free blast climbers, Alex Honnold. And he used intention to climb up the scariest rock there ever was, a giant, giant sheer rock cliff. And some of the things that he suggested are really, really helpful in overcoming doubt and negativity. For something that is really inbred and has to do with issues of your past, sometimes we recommend that somebody come to one of our retreats or one of our classes where we work on healing someone's past. It depends on the circumstance, but if it's typical doubt, fear, self-sabotage, those kinds of things, I address them in this class.
Great. One question, she says, I'm wondering about the fact that you say intention needs to be done correctly, that the right words need to be used for different types of intention. She just said, can you explore that a little bit? Because she'd like to understand what you mean by that.
Well, what I've found is that the more specific you are, the better. And I know this as well with my intention experiments. When we've done experiments using wording, and remember for the intention experiments, I will have either an audience that is in front of me or an audience that is global and joining me with this intention experiment, say via some platform like the internet, like YouTube, anything like that, my website. With the 41 experiments we've done to date, there have only been 4 that haven't worked. And a few of those were because we didn't use very specific language. So we found just sending love to water did not move the dial and change the water in any way. What did change the water was when we put out a request to move it by 1 full pH, and that happened. And we found that all the time. Being very specific in what we want in some way focuses that object on change or that person on change. So there are very specific ways that I show people. It doesn't mean you have to use my exact wording each time, because, of course, you're going to have a very different or specific type of situation than the examples that I give. But I tell people to use ideas about a time frame, use ideas about what it is, when it is, how far in advance you want to have this, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so there's great detail. It's the one thing that I see that people get wrong invariably. They aren't specific. They don't tell the universe what they want. For instance, they'll say, I want to be rich. Now, what does that mean? To you, it may mean something very different than it means to me. And invariably, people don't necessarily want to be rich. What they want is a different job. What they want is to pay their bills. What they want is a specific lump sum, or a different kind of work, or more time to spend with their children or grandchildren or with a hobby. And they feel that being rich will somehow give them that. So I help people define what it is they actually want, how much they actually need to be happy. And then we work on a very specific statement together.
Great. Will this intention technique work only with a group of 8, or can it be done on a solo basis or with fewer or more people?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, it doesn't have to be 8. It can be 6, it can be 12. It can be anything in between. 8 is a nice Goldilocks figure. It's not too big, it's not too little, but it doesn't have to be 8. And yes, it works individually. People who do my classes do intentions for themselves individually, and they do intentions for themselves within the group. What I do find is the group supersizes things. There's something about group intention that changes you physically. You get into a state, as I mentioned before, of ecstatic oneness. And I believe that is where the miracle healings occur. And by healings, I mean various areas of your life, depending on which you are focusing on. So it works individually. And I've had people, I had a student called Devinder who said, now I make intentions for everything, every day. So she's using it every day, but she was also really, really wedded to her group as well. And I have many people who do intentions by themselves, but they've been meeting with a group faithfully for years and years. So ideally, you do both.
Great. Is there any difference or difference in effectiveness of working virtually with your Power of 8 group or in person?
You get to feel people when you're in person, of course. And I mean, that's one of the reasons why I run a once-a-year retreat, and we're running one in September 1 through 7 of this year in the fabulous Broughton Hall in the Yorkshire Dales. It's a 16th century stately mansion, and it's got 3,000 acres, and the owners are highly spiritually minded. And we have everything from a beautiful meeting room to a fabulous spa, to a labyrinth, to a fire pit, to the incredible 16th century historic house itself to run this retreat. So it's wonderful to be in person. However, the vast majority of people who take courses from me do so online. They meet with their group for years, and they've never actually seen them in person. It works just as well. It doesn't matter. I know this also because our intention experiments have no difference whether or not we're just as successful if we're standing in front of the object as if we are thousands of miles away. We did a seed experiment where I was in Sydney, Australia, and the seeds were in Tucson, Arizona. I was in front of an audience of 700. We sent intention to the seeds, and lo and behold, and there were 3 sets of controls that didn't get intention, and the seeds growing that had intention grew significantly higher than the controls. And we did that 5 more times in different settings, again, thousands of miles away from the seeds, and we still had an effect. The same goes with the Power of 8 group. You can have just as much effect and also become a tight-knit, loving unit, whether or not you're in the same room or you are meeting every week over the internet. As I say, that's what tens of thousands of my former students continue to do, meet over the internet. And of course, some of them get so close, they become like an intention family that they decide to actually meet in person. I've had loads of groups that have met in Europe or met someplace in the US, some people driving 500 miles to meet the rest of the group. That's how close they become.
To what extent does the energetic state of a person have an impact on the intention?
It doesn't really have much of an impact, believe it or not. I have had total skeptics be healed. I've had people who have come to my talks or workshops really not believing. One of my favorites was a woman at a talk I gave at the Mile High Church. Her name was Faith, which is funny because she didn't have much faith in me. And she had really bad back pain, and she got dragged to this talk of mine and didn't believe one word of it until I put the audience in groups of Power of 8 and had them do an intention. And she realized after it, she wasn't even the subject of the intention, but her back pain was healed. And another favorite of mine I wrote about in my book, The Power of 8, was a teenage boy called Luke. He was 15 years old. He broke up with his first serious girlfriend, and in a fit of adolescent angst, he threw himself off a 40-foot structure onto hard ground. Now, Luke broke every bone in his body. He had brain damage, he had nerve damage, and the doctors didn't even think he was going to live. So I asked my groups at the time, my master class, to do intentions for Luke, because I heard about him from his stepfather. And every time we did, I think it was successive Sundays, his stepfather would write us and tell us exactly what happened right after our intentions. And Luke seemed to be responding extraordinarily. And he had all kinds of really quick healing that dumbfounded his doctors and was able to leave the hospital within weeks. Now, Luke is now a healthy, I think he's now about a 20-year-old, 21-year-old. He's a healthy man now. But here's the interesting thing about it. He gave his permission for our group to do intentions, but he, like most kids who are 15, if your parents believe in something, they don't. And he thought his parents' belief in this woo-woo stuff was pretty stupid. So he didn't believe in it one bit, and yet he had all of these extraordinary healings.
Do you have any influence on forming the groups in this class, like giving advice?
Yes, I do give advice, and we help if people are having struggling. We ask people in the community site that we're setting up for this class to formulate their own groups, but we'll give you advice about exactly how to do it, how to let other people know where you are, what your preferred time zones are, et cetera, your preferred meeting times in the week. We help you out with all of that so that anybody who wants a group, we hope to make sure that they have one.
Great. And can you just talk a little bit more about the community? Because I think a lot of people think it's on Facebook.
Okay, it's not on Facebook. We used to have community sites on Facebook, but a lot of people don't like social media anymore, and with great reason. That's why we set up a private community site that's free for people to join. But this is like your own private Facebook group, but it's not on Facebook. It's on my website. People cannot get to this if they're not in the class themselves. We have to let people in manually. So we check to see if you're on the class before we let you in. In this community site and in your special community group that's on this site, you do, and you can post like you do on Facebook or other social media, but it's not visible to anybody else outside of the class itself. You can even create a subgroup that are just the people in your Power of Eight group. So it works like groups on social media, but it's completely private. It's not social media. You won't have ads. You won't have people butting in. You won't have nasty comments. All of that is out of it. And that's why we created this community site.
And then just in relation to groups, we've had a couple of people saying, what if they can't attend either the first session or another session? Can they still be part of a group and a Power of Eight group?
Oh, yeah. If you can't attend one or more of these classes, remember they're recorded. So all we ask is that you try to keep up and listen to everything that's being taught and practice the homework, because you'll be able to be much more proficient at this if you practice the sorts of things that I'm asking you to do. It's not onerous homework, but it will really make the difference between success and failure. So if there's a few you can't attend live, you can watch it at your leisure and then join. But that's not a condition for being part of a Power of Eight group at the end. All I suggest is everybody make as much attempt to be there for each session as you can, and particularly the 6th live session. But try to be there. You'll get the most out of the class if you are. And of course, you'll be able to start making friends right there on the chat while you attend the class.
How specific does a person have to be about their situation before you can intend for them?
Well, I'm not sure what you mean by that. You mean in telling the group things? It's helpful to be as specific as you can. You will learn to trust the people that you're working with. Now, it may be a really private type of intention initially, and you may not want to share that just off the bat. But why don't you do a less delicate intention first with the group? And then when you realize you all get to know each other, then perhaps you can share more confidentially about yourself. But the more specific you can be, the better. It's really what's necessary for the intention. You don't have to give a whole long history. Let's say you're not getting along with your husband or wife. You don't have to give the whole history of your ups and downs, but maybe just the latest picture and what's going on, so people can get an idea and then hold it in their hearts to intend for you. And what you'll find, and what everybody finds, is there's something so powerful about having a group of essentially strangers intending for you. And then you realize after a while, they've got your back. They are so loving and you're so close. I had a student called Jerry who joined my masterclass during lockdown. And he got so close to the people in that group that he wanted more. So he joined the class again. I said, Jerry, you're going to learn the same stuff. He said, I don't care. I want another group. I want more of it. I want to learn it all over again. So he did. And by the end of the second year, he said, I now know what love is. I've felt more love from these two groups than I have any other time of my life. That's how powerful it is. A group of strangers who have your back. Amazing.
This is kind of related to that question, but how do you get people comfortable enough to share their situation? And do you mention confidentiality as well?
It's just time. Everybody's in the same boat. Everybody is sharing private things about themselves, about their health, about their work, about their finances, about their relationships, or their hopes and dreams for their life purpose. And there is an unspoken sense among the group that people are going to just keep it to the group. After all, who will they tell? We're so worried about talking about our private lives to people like this in a Power of 8 group. But think about it for a second. Who are they going to tell? And even aside from that, think about what they're doing. They're entrusting you with their situation, with their private thoughts and dreams. So they're expecting that level of trust from you too. So it just develops over time. The group, as it goes, gets closer and closer and closer. As I say, I see this invariably.
And do you find that it works better for strangers getting together rather than friends and family?
Ironically, it does. People do get together with friends. I have a Power of 8 group. I have 2 of them, and they are made up of friends. But we share, and we share very confidentially with each other. But I've also been part of Power of 8 groups that are total strangers, and a loving connection works there and works very, very quickly. I think it's just probably more powerful with a little less baggage when they're a bunch of strangers. In a funny way, you can be more honest and more confidential about your situation because they don't know other people related to you. They don't have the same friend connections. So you can talk to them in confidence. And also, I think there's something else that is magical about seeing these people who you didn't know, you haven't even met face to face, being so connected and loving toward you and becoming your dear friend. I love the story of Mitchell Dean, who got very close to a guy called Robert Morales. And Mitchell had a lot of problems, particularly ongoing near suicidal depression. And the group healed him. I mean, it was amazing. They did an intention to find out the cause of it. And he found that one of his liver filtration systems wasn't working. He had this desire after their intention to go to a Chinese herbalist for some reason. And the herbalist said, let's test your liver. And lo and behold, one of them wasn't working. And that was the cause of the problem to a great degree. But Mitchell also suffered from periodic insomnia. And one time he told the group the next day, yeah, I had I've been suffering from insomnia. And Robert turned to him and said, don't worry, last night I had your back. I was intending for you. And that kind of connection, that kind of idea that someone does have your back, this former total stranger, is really, really healing.
Sorry, can someone make an intention for a political body to work together?
Yeah, I would recommend that you don't try to do intention. I never do intention for one group over another. So for Republicans to win the presidential election or for Democrats to win the presidential election. You can intend for parties to work together. You can intend for greater unity in Congress. I would say if you're just learning intention essentials, I would stick with more simple things relating to one person. Those are tricky and they are big. But your group can, if they want to, intend for greater harmony. That the political parties could all use the world over, and particularly in America and particularly in Britain at the moment, where I live.
Right, we've got a couple of people asking if you can give examples of a good intention.
Okay, let's say somebody is got a bad foot. Let's say they have a painful big toe on their right foot. So instead of trying to heal, just saying their foot feel better or whatever, I would do something like this. And let's say the person is called Jane Doe. Our intention, if it's a group intending, is that Jane Doe be immediately, completely, and permanently healed of all pain in the big toe of her right foot, so that she is healthy and well in every way. That kind of thing. So you can see how I've given a time frame immediately, and what completely, and what is it? The big toe of her right foot. So I've been very specific, and as part of a bigger thing, being healthy and well in every way. So that I would consider a nice specific intention. There are many variations of something like that I teach and I teach how to frame all of the different areas. So that's health, finances, career, hobbies, loved one, life purpose, and new relationships even. I've had many people get new relationships. My favorite, I've talked about many times, is Joy, who was in our class during lockdown, and she wanted to have more love in her life. She wanted to meet a new love. Now, Joy was living in Australia, and she must have been probably well into her 60s. So her group does an intention for her, and within about a week, she gets a call out of nowhere, from her boyfriend from 35 years ago. 35 years ago. And he's in the UK, she's in Australia. Nevertheless, they start writing and texting and calling. And this is during lockdown, too. Ultimately, he makes the decision to fly to Australia, go through 2 weeks of quarantine. And at that time it was, you got to stay in a hotel. You can't go out at all. You just stay in your hotel room for 2 weeks. And afterward got out, saw Joy, and they are together. They're living together. So that was one of my great examples of how you can also attract new love in your life via intention.
Great. One person said, I'm a transformational life coach, so I'm sort of in the field already. Would this class be valuable if I'm already in this mindset, or is there another option that's maybe more at my level? She said, I do not have all I would love in my life, so I'm not doing something properly, I guess.
Okay, it really depends on whether you're doing it for you or you're trying to improve your practice. I have another class called Become a Better Healer with the Power of 8, which I'm going to be teaching in. That's an evergreen course, but I'm also going to be really highlighting it in the autumn and have a live session as well with that. So you might want to look on my website and check that out. If you're mainly talking about yourself, I think going through my series of courses like Intention Essentials, the Masterclass, etc., would be really good for you.
If you're trying to heal a specific health issue, do you have to carry on doing the intention so it doesn't come back? Or sort of how long do you have to carry on with the intentions?
Well, a lot of people do it once. I'm about to talk again to a woman called Lisa who had a genetic liver disease. She was a candidate for a liver replacement. She had was born with a deficiency of a particular enzyme, which meant her liver was highly scarred and her spleen was enlarged. And doctors couldn't do anything for her. She came along to an organization called the Sanctuary that was running Power of Eight groups at our behest. And she went for her first session, felt energy all around the part of her liver and all kinds of things, and felt something really shifted. And within a month or two, she went to see a consultant, her liver specialist, and then another one, both of whom wrote to her to say, there is no more scarring. Your spleen is normal. And it's been normal. This was about 2018. It's still normal. I just contacted her the other day. So one intention. Other people will find something happens, something goes away, and maybe a little bit of it comes back. So then you do the intention again. If it doesn't go away or improve or heal that first time around, I tell people don't over intend for it. Do it a few times. And then what I'll teach you to do that you'll find out about is learning how to intend for someone else. Just drop that, intend for someone else, and see what happens. Invariably, people who are stuck have a shift by group. The sending, the receiving seems to be really important in healing too. So there's no set number that I can give you that works for everybody. It really depends on your individual case. But I give you plenty of suggestions in the class about what to do with a specific situation.
Is the Intention Essentials course required before doing any other of your courses, for example, the masterclass or the New Science?
No, it's not a prerequisite. Many people who do go on to do the masterclass are happy they did Essentials first, but it's not a prerequisite, and we have some ways to help people who haven't. But I always advise there's a lot to learn with all of this, particularly when you start adding in relationships and learning how to read other people's intentions and all of that. And so it's great to get a grounding first.
When you are that specific with an intention, do you limit yourself with the outcome?
Everybody asks this, and answer is no. It's a signpost to the universe. A lot of people think, no, I can't ask for exactly what I want because it'll limit. I won't get better than that. Let me give you an example of how that's not true. In all of my peace intention experiments, I always quantify how much I want violence to go down. And I've always said 10% as a very modest figure. So when we did our Sri Lankan intention experiment, trying to lower violence in that 25-year war, we asked for 10%. Violence went up during the week of our intention, but then plummeted afterward by 75%. And ultimately, what really was mind-boggling is that had been a really intractable war. And within a few months, the government, which had been at a stalemate with the rebel forces who had choked off the entire north of the country, the government reclaimed that land and was able to push the rebels into a tiny corner. And within 3 more months, that intractable war was finished, was over. It ended in a bloody finish, but it ended. Now, the final number that occurred in terms of violence was far different from what we'd asked for. It was far larger. Same thing happened when we did an intention to lower violence in 2 southern provinces of Afghanistan. Same thing happened, far more. we asked for 10%, it was 240% lower. When we asked to lower violence in St. Louis, Missouri, I asked for 10% lowering in the neighborhood we were focusing on, Fairgrounds violent crime went down by 43%. So it gives the universe a signpost. This is exactly what I want, but it's never limited. And I've seen many times where people ask for something more modest, and then they get something amazing. They'll ask for, I had one woman who asked to find an apartment with a nice little patio for her dog. It ended up that she got the most amazing house, a full house with a giant backyard, and plenty of space for her dog, even a sauna, and at less than the money she had said she had been willing to spend. So it doesn't limit you, but it gives the universe at least a parameter. That's how I look at it.
Is there a denomination of church that has adopted the Power of 8 as part of what it offers?
There is. I think certain unity churches use the Power of 8. Those kinds of New Thought churches have used the Power of 8. The Association of Global New Thought has published some things about it. The Center for Spiritual Living, I think there's some organizations that like to use it. So there are a few like that. In the main, it's me. And I've only taught a few people because there's a lot of science that I include in my courses. I feel that they aren't necessarily required to do a Power-Based group, but it's a really necessary backdrop to understand why it works and to also understand and refine some of the practices. So I teach Science Light during these courses. So you'll get some of that in this Intention Essentials course, which will underpin everything I'm teaching you.
One person would like to know what inspired you to begin this research on the field and healing?
Great question. Well, I run with my husband a magazine called What Doctors Don't Tell You. When we started in 1990, in the 90s, I was doing research for the magazine, which entailed going through the medical literature, which is what we still do. And I kept coming across good studies of spiritual healing. So I am an investigative reporter by background, and I kept thinking to myself, wait a minute, if we can have a thought and send it to someone else, which is essentially what spiritual healing is often, and we can make them better, well, that undermines everything we think about how the world works. So I set out to find out why this could be so. And I decided to start with talking to frontier scientists who were doing work in consciousness research. So people like the late Robert John, the Dean of Engineering at Princeton University, and Fritz Albert Popp, a physicist at Freiburg University, and many places like that. And at first, I started realizing that what they were talking about, what they were discovering in their own little experimental models, compounded into a completely new science, a completely new view of the world. And so that inspired me to put all of this together because scientists talk in math, they talk in code, and they also don't like to venture beyond their experimental patch to try to figure out, well, what does this all mean? After a while, after researching and interviewing many of these people, I realized that job was going to have to fall to me. So that started me in writing the field. But writing that book changed the messenger too, because I realized that some of what I'd put in the book was experimental evidence that thoughts are an actual something with the capacity to change physical matter. So the journalist in me wanted to find out, how far can we take this? You know, we're talking about just tiny little shifts like shifting a quantum particle? Or are we talking about healing cancer with our thoughts? And also, I was fascinated and intrigued by the idea of whether or not lots of people thinking the same thought at the same time magnifies the effect. So that inspired me to write the intention experiment, which was then also an invitation for people to take part in periodic experiments. Because I realized by then I know a lot of these scientists working at prestigious universities doing consciousness research. And I also had a very decent number of readers because the field was in 30 languages. So I thought if I put them together, I'll have the biggest laboratory, global laboratory in the world. And so that's what's been happening since 2007. But it was only in shrinking them down, just testing it once in a workshop, that I suddenly found that people were getting healed. I didn't expect that. I put people in groups of 8 or so in 2008 in a workshop in Chicago, thinking it was going to be just a feel-good effect. But it wasn't. It was, they were getting healed. I had a person mostly heal of cataract issues, 80%, she said. Somebody else get healed of depression. Somebody else get healed of irritable bowel syndrome. Somebody else who had been limping badly walked normally into the room after getting that intention. So that set me on a course to try to figure out why this works and also how best to have it work. And that's where I did a lot of research over the years. Finally wrote my book, The Power of 8. It took me 10 years of studying, researching, putting people into groups, working out what worked, what didn't work, before I wrote that book and published it 10 years later. So all that work changed the messenger and changed the message too. And I consider myself essentially like a guardian of this technique, which is really a demonstration of our extraordinary human capacity to heal ourselves, each other, and the world. And so I try to protect it, to make sure it doesn't get used inappropriately. And so I'm careful with it. And that's another reason why I want to teach people in a very specific way, because in a sense, I was gifted with this to give it to the world and to show the world how to do it. And that's essentially what I do.
Great. I think we've got 2 more questions. Are there any transcripts or handouts to go with the video session?
We don't do transcripts, but you have access to the videos. And I prefer you do that than have transcripts. And the reason for that is the evidence shows that you are much more likely to learn something if you write down notes. If you take notes, you're most likely going to remember it far more than if you just study a transcript. And also, if you watch somebody speaking about it, you're more likely to listen and to absorb it. You have access to these recordings for an indefinite period of time, so you can go over them over and over again, but I don't give transcripts out. You will get notes. The next week, you'll get emails from us with the recording. Each week, you'll get the recording to have access to, and you'll also get an email of all the homework we've discussed. So you'll have all of that in written form. So you don't have to listen again to the recordings to get the homework, although the homework is in each recording. But there's a very deliberate reason that I do that. And as I say, it's something like you're 75% more likely to achieve your goals when you write them down. So I make sure you have to do that.
Great. Final question. How about a person's divine destiny and then intervening with group intentions? Does this cause an issue?
No, and you have to think about when you say your divine destiny, that would suggest that it's all fixed out, that there's nothing that would change it, that life is a completely deterministic universe. I don't believe that's the case, and I don't believe any religion. I don't believe Jesus felt it was the case. He created groups. He said to his apostles, essentially, pray passionately and with one voice. You will heal and you will be healed. If he didn't think that that was somebody's destiny, he wouldn't offer that. If you understand life as a quantum effect, which it is now, which scientists are now recognizing that biology operates according to quantum principles, it is not deterministic. Our observation, our involvement with our world changes it, alters it, moves it in a certain direction. So there is no reason why you cannot offer intention or group intention to improve your life. Think of it this way. Maybe being part of a group and improving your life is part of that journey, is part of your divine destiny.
Yeah, I think that's it.
Okay, everybody. Well, I hope that answered all of your questions. I'm sure you'll see in the chat, there will be information about how to join the Intention Essentials. If you'd like to join this, you'll find it also on my website, lynnmctaggart.com. It's right on the front there. You can connect with it and sign up. You can find out more about it if you still have questions. I hope you enjoyed this, and I really hope to see you there. And also, if you are interested in healing your past, do check out the information we have again on lynnmctaggart.com about our Broughton whole retreat, which we're happening. It's called Heal Your Past. I'm running it with my husband, Brian Hubbard, author of The Untrue Story of You, and an expert in also working with people to heal their past. You can find out more about that on lynnmctaggart.com. It's been a pleasure taking your questions. Thank you, Molly, for helping out. Thank you, everybody, for showing up. And I hope to see you soon. Thanks again. And by the way, don't forget, the course kicks off on Saturday, this Saturday, June 15th. So if you want to join us, please do so. Thanks again. Bye.